Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive here on Green Dolphin Science.
Great to be back.
You know, for millennia, honey has been, well, revered. More than just something sweet, right?
Oh, absolutely. Celebrated everywhere for healing, for its natural goodness.
Yeah, it has this really ancient reputation as this, functional food powerhouse.
Totally. If you look back, it wasn't just about taste. It was medicine preservative. People saw it as just inherently good.
Right. But pull that into today, our modern world, and suddenly there's a bit of a shadow over that golden image. A really significant and, well, growing global concern about what else might be lurking in that jar, besides the sweetness we expect.
The unexpected stuff, yeah. The darker side.
Exactly.
And that's precisely what we're diving into today. We've been digging into this really comprehensive review article just published this year.
Okay.
And it pulls together a huge amount of research specifically on this topic, the hazards, basically, of honey adulteration and contamination.
Got it. So our mission today, using this expert review as our guide, is really to unpack this.
Yeah.
What do adulteration and contamination actually mean for honey? Where are these problems coming from? What are the potential health risks for you, the person actually eating it?
And what's science doing to even detect these things?
All right. It's about getting you quickly and thoroughly informed on what's clearly a complex issue.
Okay, so maybe let's start with the good stuff. Why does honey have this amazing reputation to begin with?
Good idea.
At its core, yeah, okay, it's mostly sugars, fructose, glucose, it's the bulk of it.
Sure.
But the magic, it's in the trace compounds, the enzymes, those antioxidants we hear about like flavonoids, phenolic acids, plus tiny bits of vitamins, minerals.
And the review points out that mix is incredibly different depending on where the bees were foraging. Right?
Totally. The plants, the region, it all changes the final product.
And those natural bits are what give it the health benefits we hear about, traditional and, well, scientifically studied ones.
Exactly. The source confirms its history, and modern research backs up things like its anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, antibacterial, even wound-healing properties.
Like using it for coughs, sore throats. The review mentions that specifically.
Yeah, and maybe helping with digestive issues, like reducing how long diarrhea lasts in some studies.
And using it topically, too, for burns, eczema, that kind of thing.
Yes, and interestingly, the review even touches on studies suggesting that eating honey regularly might benefit markers linked to metabolic syndrome.
Oh, wow. Like improving lipids, triglycerides, cholesterol.
Potentially, yeah. The research is pointing that way.
Okay, but here's where it gets, well, really interesting. And it's a critical health warning straight from the source. Something a lot of people, frankly, still don't seem to know.
Ah, yes, the big one.
The absolute ban on giving honey to infants. Babies under 12 months old.
This is so crucial, non-negotiable. The risk is Clostridium botulinum spores.
Which are harmless to most of us.
Right. For older kids and adults, usually no problem. But in an infant's gut, which is still developing, these spores can germinate. They produce toxins.
Leading to infantile botulism.
Exactly. And the source gives some pretty alarming data. It shows an association with about 15% of U.S. infant botulism cases reported to the CDC.
Wow, 15%. That's significant.
It is. It's a specific risk, maybe not common overall, but the consequences can be incredibly severe. So absolutely no honey for babies under 1.
Vital information. Okay, so let's pivot to that sour side. Now, adulteration.
Right. Adulteration is basically deception. It's fraud for profit.
Plain and simple.
You're adding foreign stuff, usually cheaper sweeteners, think glucose syrup, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup.
The usual suspects.
Yeah. The goal is just to bulk up the volume, sell more product, obviously watering down the quality and the good stuff in the real honey.
And the review makes it clear this isn't just a tiny problem. Honey is ranked as one of the most frequently adulterated foods globally.
That's staggering.
It is. Top 10 in Europe.
Yep.
And it holds the pretty infamous 3rd spot in the U.S. food fraud database, right behind milk and olive oil.
Wow. That really tells you the scale we're dealing with.
It does.
And the source kind of breaks down how it happens. You've got direct adulteration, literally just storing syrups in after the honey's harvested.
Yeah.
Then there's indirect adulteration. This is where maybe beekeepers overfeed their bees with artificial sugars or expose them to pesticides, which then affects the honey the bees actually produce.
So it gets in before harvesting.
Right. And then there's blending, mixing your good quality honey with lower quality stuff, or even honey that's already been adulterated.
So beyond just being ripped off, the review talks about the health implications, doesn't it?
Yes, significantly.
Yeah.
When you swap out honey's natural profile for these industrial syrups, you change how it behaves in the body.
Right.
Studies cited in the review, mostly animal studies, showed negative effects from adulterated honey, things like weight gain, higher blood glucose, worse lipid levels.
So over time, eating these fake honeys, especially the ones loaded with extra glucose and fructose, it could potentially push you towards chronic problems, like diabetes, heart issues.
That's the concern, yes. By triggering metabolic pathways that pure honey doesn't seem to affect in the same way.
And catching this fraud, it sounds tricky.
It really can be. Sometimes the added sugars look chemically very similar to honey's natural sugars, especially if they don't add huge amounts.
Oh, how do they do it?
Well, the source mentions scientists rely on pretty advanced techniques, things like isotope ratio mass spectrometry, or IRMS, and nuclear magnetic resonance NMR.
NMR sounds complex.
Think of it like taking a super detailed chemical fingerprint of the honey. It can spot if the pattern looks wrong, if something extra is in there. The review actually notes NMR is often seen as more reliable and faster than some older tests.
Okay, so that's adulteration, adding stuff deliberately to cheat. What about the other big hazard the review highlights? Contamination.
Right, contamination is different. This is about unwanted, potentially harmful stuff getting into the honey unintentionally.
How does that happen?
Oh, pretty much any step along the way. From the environment around the hive, the air, soil, water, from the beekeeper's practices, even during processing and packaging.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The review points to several key categories of these contaminants. First up, a big one. Pesticides.
Yeah, pesticides are a major worry. These are basically perfect little delivery systems for them.
How so?
Well, they fly around, collect nectar, collect pollen. If those plants have been treated with pesticides...
The residues come back to the hive.
Exactly. Plus, beekeepers sometimes use chemicals inside the hive, like varroacides, to kill mites. And those chemicals can build up, especially in the beeswax and the stored pollen.
And the health risks from eating these residues long term. The review mentions some serious stuff.
It does. Potential links to neurological problems, hormonal imbalances, maybe even increased risk for certain cancers. And for kids, the risks are especially concerning developmental issues, potentially.
Plus, they can build up in our bodies over time. Bioaccumulation.
That's right. And what makes it even trickier is that the rules... the maximum residue limits, or MRLs.
The legal limits.
Yeah, how much pesticide is allowed in food, they vary wildly depending on the country or region.
So what's okay in one place might be illegal somewhere else?
Precisely. Which makes regulating global trade and ensuring safety really difficult. Detecting them usually involves complex lab methods like chromatography, GC, or LC, often linked with mass spectrometry, to ID the specific chemicals and measure how much is there.
Okay, next category from the review. Antibiotics. Why are antibiotics ending up in honey?
Beekeepers sometimes use them to treat bacterial diseases in the bee colonies, things like American foul brood or European foul brood.
Okay, makes sense for the bees, but the problem for us.
The huge public health concern, and the source really stresses this, isn't just the residue itself. It's how it contributes to the massive global problem of antibiotic resistance in humans.
Ah, right. So eating low levels in food helps bacteria get stronger against the drugs we need.
That's the mechanism, yeah. It makes those vital medications potentially less effective when we actually get sick and need them.
That's a massive knock-on effect. Are there other health concerns mentioned?
Yes. The source also points to things like allergic reactions in people sensitive to certain antibiotics, like beta-lactams, and potential links, though some of these are banned now in many places, between types like nitrofurans or nitroimidazoles and increased cancer risk.
Any specific antibiotics they call out?
Oxytetracycline is mentioned as common, though resistance is an issue there too. Streptomycin is used sometimes, but the review notes that even though it's banned in many places due to toxicity worries, it's still apparently recommended in some online beekeeping forums or older guides, which is, well, concerning.
Definitely.
Sulfonamides are another group used, and the source highlights a really severe risk with those, specifically for infants. They can mess with bilirubin processing and potentially lead to toxic encephalopathy.
Wow. And again, I assume the rules are inconsistent globally.
Exactly. The review says there's a lack of globally agreed standards, no set minimum performance limits or restricted levels for antibiotics in honey everywhere. Detection involves screening tests, but for confirmation, they use highly sensitive methods like LC-MSMS.
Okay, moving on. Microorganisms. This seems counterintuitive. Isn't honey naturally antibacterial?
It is, largely. You're right. The low water content, high sugar, the acidity, it all helps inhibit most bacteria and fungi from growing. But the review notes, microorganisms can still be present in honey. They can come from the bees, from pollen, the hive environment, maybe even during processing.
And what's fascinating here, despite honey's natural defenses, one specific microbe keeps popping up in the review related to contamination. We mentioned it earlier.
Clostridium botulinum spores again.
Yes.
The review circles right back to this. It actually gives prevalence data from different countries. Finding these spores in, say, 1 to 7% of samples in Argentina and Brazil, maybe 10% in the U.S., 5% in Japan, 8 to 12% in Finland.
And that prevalence, finding it in the honey itself, directly links back to that risk of infantile botulism.
Absolutely. It underscores why that rule, no honey for babies under 1, is so critical. The source does add that processes like gamma radiation can kill these spores if honey needs sterilizing, maybe for specific medical uses.
Interesting. Any other microbes mentioned?
Briefly, yes. Things like yeasts, candida, rhodotorula, which often come from flowers or surfaces. Bees can basically act as carriers, bringing them into the hive. Detecting these used to be slow, but the source mentions newer, faster techniques like MALDI-TOF-MS are promising for identifying microbes quickly.
Okay, last big category, heavy metals. Where are these coming from?
Heavy metals in honey are mostly a sign of environmental pollution.
So like industrial pollution?
Yeah, contaminated soil, water, air near the hives, industrial activity, but also potentially from the containers used during processing or storage.
And the danger with heavy metals is that they stick around, right? They accumulate.
Exactly. They persist, they build up in the body. The review warns about serious potential effects, mutagenic, carcinogenic risks, irreversible organ damage, and particularly worrying impacts on children's neurological development.
Which specific metals are most concerning in honey?
The review highlights key toxic ones. Lead, a well-known neurotoxin, especially bad for kids, cadmium linked to kidney and bone issues, and mercury, another potent neurotoxin, very dangerous for fetuses and young children.
And they're classified based on cancer risk, too.
Yes, international agencies categorize them based on carcinogenicity.
The review also mentioned something called THQ, Target Hazard Quotient.
Right. THQ is like a risk score. If the value calculated for a metal in honey is over 1, it suggests there's a potential risk of adverse health effects from consuming it.
And which metal often scores highest?
The source points out that lead often shows the highest THQ in honey studies, meaning it frequently poses the greatest potential risk among the metals found.
And crucially, the levels in honey reflect the local environment.
Directly. The source links environmental pollution levels to heavy metal levels in honey. It even notes geographical hotspots. Countries like Turkey, Iran, Bulgaria have reported significantly higher THQ levels in honey compared to other areas studied. Probably reflects local pollution.
So for beekeepers, prevention is about location, location, location.
Pretty much. Careful hive placement, keeping colonies away from busy roads, industrial areas, polluted water sources. Detection uses methods like atomic absorption spectroscopy, AAS, or ICP methods, which can measure really tiny amounts of metals.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, the adulteration, the pesticides, antibiotics, microbes, heavy metals, what does this all really mean for us, for you listening? What's the bigger picture?
Well, it means that while honey definitely has those amazing natural benefits we started with, these threats, both the deliberate cheating and the unintentional contamination, they seriously undermine the quality and safety we expect.
That pure, simple image of honey gets complicated.
Very complicated. And if you connect it to the bigger picture, honey really acts as a bioindicator. What's in the honey reflects the health of the environment where those bees were foraging.
Like a little sticky report card on local pollution.
Exactly. And the review makes it clear, a major hurdle is the lack of consistent global rules. No universally agreed upon, legally enforced limits for many contaminants.
Which makes regulation and trade really difficult.
Incredibly challenging.
So given all this, what should you, the listener, take away? Next time you're looking at a shelf full of honey, what can you actually do?
The source really emphasizes being an informed consumer. Look closely at labels. Maybe seek out certifications from reputable sources that test for authenticity and contaminants.
Okay.
And importantly, try to support beekeepers who use sustainable, responsible practices, minimizing chemical use, choosing hive locations carefully.
It sounds like tackling this needs effort from everyone.
Definitely. The review stresses the need for ongoing things, rigorous monitoring by authorities, more research into better, faster detection methods, and just responsible practices all the way through the chain, from the hive to the jar.
It's a complex web, isn't it?
It really is. But understanding it is definitely the first step towards pushing for higher standards.
Absolutely. So to wrap up this deep dive, we've gone from honey's ancient image as this pure healing food to the modern reality where fraud and pollution pose these significant challenges to its quality and, frankly, its safety.
It's a pretty stark reminder that even natural foods aren't immune to human activity and environmental issues.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Given this complex tangle of environmental factors, human practices, does the idea of pure honey even mean the same thing it used to? Or, thinking about those varying standards across the globe, how much responsibility really falls on us, the consumers, to dig deeper and truly understand what might be in that jar we're buying?
Definitely something to ponder next time you reach for the honey pot.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the potential hazards in honey.